Hey everyone, what's up? You're tuned into Six Path Weeb, where the ninja world meets imagination. Welcome to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into another emotional twist in the hidden leaf. Our fanfic topic for this episode: what if Minato's words deeply hurt Naruko? Part 3. Get ready for powerful emotions, unexpected turns, and character-driven storytelling. Disclaimer: this content is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's get into it, Shinobi. Hit that like button, and let the story begin. You don't have to do this, Konan, Naruko said calmly to the taller woman as they stood a few miles from the Ame border. You can choose a peaceful life elsewhere. Konan knelt so she was eye level with Naruko, gently taking her hand. Naruko, still unaccustomed to being touched by others besides Shinyu, flinched slightly. Don't worry about me, Naruko-chan. I'll be just fine. She placed a soft kiss on Naruko's cheek. Naruko flinched again but then stood up straight. Please stay safe. I should be saying that to you. Konan's usual stoic expression shifted into a faint smile, and she nodded before a small whirlwind of paper spiraled around her, forming elegant wings. With a gentle wave, the angel of Amigakure no Sato took flight and disappeared toward her village. Good riddance, a small voice mumbled behind Naruko. She turned, chuckling, and ruffled the younger girl's hair. Do you have a problem with Konan, Shin-chan? Yes, I do. Shin crossed her arms with a frown. She keeps looking at you weirdly. Like you're some sort of divine figure or something. It's a little creepy. Naruko smiled and shook her head. I'm sure it's nothing serious. Then she glanced toward the distant silhouette of Konoha. We'll keep moving until we're about a mile from the village, then wait until nightfall before entering. Did you leave anything back in the cave? Shin shook her head. Nope. All right, climb on. We've got a bit of distance left to cover. The 5-year-old climbed onto Naruko's back and wrapped her arms around her neck securely. Ready? She squeaked, and Naruko took off through the trees. After several hours of swift travel through the treetops, Naruko sat at the top of the tallest tree she could find, more than 40 feet above the ground, observing the rotation of Konoha's gate guards. It seemed the guard she had briefly incapacitated had raised some concern. She made a mental note to be more discreet in the future. Ni, Naruko-san? Shin whispered from where she was perched beside her, swinging her legs. Naruko responded with a soft hum. What am I going to do in Konoha? Naruko remained silent for a moment, thinking. Honestly? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe, if you're interested, you could enroll in the Ninja Academy when you turn 8. I want to be a ninja. I really do. But what if no one wants to be my friend? Naruko wasn't exactly the best person to answer that. Her experiences with friendship were limited, Shino, Hanabi, and perhaps Hinata, but she searched her thoughts and remembered what she would have said to Mito. If no one wants to be your friend, don't let it bother you. I'll always be your friend. She smiled gently. And if anyone teases you, make them regret it in a funny way, maybe make them accidentally embarrass themselves or something. Shin giggled, covering her mouth. Naruko looked at her, confused, wondering what she had said that was amusing, but decided it must be one of those things she didn't quite understand about kids. Shin poked her shoulder. Is that what you did? I think so. My sister definitely does. She even has her own group of admirers. Wait, admirers? You don't have any? I hope not. I'm sure you have admirers too, Naruko-san, Shin whispered with a grin. A slight chill went down Naruko's spine. Let's hope not. Oh hush, I bet you even have a secret admirer who follows you around. We're not discussing that. Shin nudged her. Why? Do you have something against people who like others of the same gender? I don't, Naruko said simply. Do you like anyone? Anyone at all? Even if it's someone unexpected, I promise I won't laugh. Naruko glanced at her sideways. Do you like someone? Shin hesitated, fidgeting and blushing deeply. It depends on what kind of like you mean. But I like you. Naruko smiled warmly and patted her head. That's kind of you, Shin-chan. I like you too. Shin growled playfully and pretended to nip at Naruko's hand, but she pulled it away just in time. What? Naruko asked, confused by the glare she received. Shin turned away, arms folded and cheeks puffed out. Girls. They sat in silence, with the small girl occasionally growling and gently punching Naruko's shoulder if she breathed too loudly. As night fell, it was finally time to move. Naruko stood and stretched as Shin climbed onto her back again, squeezing a little too tightly. Ready? Naruko nodded and took off through the shadows of the trees. They paused beneath a tall tree about 30 feet from Konoha's gate. Naruko adjusted her half-face mask and glasses, double-checked that her henge technique was in place, and observed the guards. One of the Chunin guards laughed at a joke, while the other muttered a reply before turning to an Anbu operative who had just landed nearby. The Anbu nodded and stayed with them for a short shift. Naruko saw her opportunity. She crept to the edge of the tree's shadow, picked up a small rock, calmed her breathing, and sprinted. The moonlight cast a shadow beneath her, but the guards didn't seem to notice. She reached the wall, crept along its edge, and threw the rock in the opposite direction. The noise drew the guards' attention, and she slipped quietly through the gate, heading straight for Higurashi's weapon shop, unaware that alone I was watching her every move. Kakashi, arriving early for his shift, noticed the movement. Silently and swiftly, he followed the small figure heading toward the market district. Behind his dog-themed Anbu mask, his Sharingan remained hidden, for now. When the figure slowed, Kakashi dropped in front of them and took a stance. "Who are you, and what is your purpose in Konoha?" he asked, his tone commanding and serious. The figure didn't answer but shifted into a defensive stance. Kakashi noted some imperfections, but they seemed intentional. "Reveal yourself, or I'll have to intervene." Still, no reply. He tilted his head slightly, then moved in a blur to appear behind them, aiming to lightly immobilize the intruder. However, they rolled out of the way, barely avoiding contact. They took a more secure stance and formed a couple of hand signs. Fire clone technique. 4 fiery silhouettes sprang to life. One clone took a bundle from the original's back and disappeared into an alley. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the unfamiliar technique but didn't hesitate. The clones and original charged him together. To their credit, the intruder was fast, faster than most seasoned ninja. The coordinated clones launched a flurry of strikes, punches, kicks, and agile spins. Kakashi, calm and collected, dodged and parried with precision. The clones didn't disappear until he struck precise, non-injurious blows. They battled for nearly 30 minutes, and despite the complexity of the engagement, the young figure showed no signs of slowing down. After landing a light kick to Kakashi's side, the figure jumped back and launched green chakra threads from their fingertips. Recognizing the threat, Kakashi leapt away and activated his Sharingan. The movement startled the figure, causing their threads to briefly falter. Without hesitation, they unsealed what looked like a wrapped humanoid shape. "A puppet master, huh?" Kakashi mused thoughtfully. "I don't believe the Sand Village has any current tensions with us. I'll need to resolve this swiftly before another surprise arises." The puppet advanced with remarkable speed, wielding a black scythe enveloped in an odd, green chakra aura. Kakashi, unfazed, unsheathed 2 kunai and intercepted the puppet's downward strike. He recognized immediately that the puppet moved faster than most puppeteers could control, and silently appreciated that he had already activated his Sharingan. He theorized that this puppet was designed for close-quarters combat, possibly enhanced to bypass the natural limitations of human reflexes, clearly the work of a skilled, albeit still developing, puppeteer. Parrying the puppet's attack, Kakashi stabbed its hand, causing the weapon to drop. Despite losing its weapon, the puppet remained aggressive. Kakashi used his second kunai in a calculated swipe toward its head, but the puppet twisted in an unnatural arc and retaliated with a powerful kick aimed at his chin. In a puff of smoke, the Kakashi that had been hit vanished. It was a shadow clone. The real Kakashi had anticipated the move and used the opportunity to grab the puppet's ankles, pulling it down and disarming it completely. With precise chakra control, he delivered a swift kick to the puppet's head, sending it flying toward a mysterious figure who caught it effortlessly. Though slightly winded, Kakashi remained composed. He deftly avoided a hasty kick aimed at his chest and countered by grabbing the opponent's leg, carefully using the momentum to pin them gently but firmly against the nearby weapon shop wall. "That was quite a performance," Kakashi said calmly. Holding a kunai near the figure's neck, he added, "No chakra strings, please. Let's keep this civil." The figure relaxed and gave a small nod. "My mask and glasses," the voice murmured. Another masked individual stepped forward and removed them. As if on cue, the moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting soft light over the scene. The figure's hair changed from black to blonde, and the previously dull green eyes became vivid and clear. "Hello, Kakashi-san," the voice greeted politely. "Naruko?" Kakashi asked in surprise. The young girl gave a small nod. He stepped back, giving her space to stand and brush off her clothes. You were the one who temporarily incapacitated Izumo and Kotetsu 5 months ago, weren't you? Naruko nodded again. Kakashi sighed and removed his Onbu mask. So the Naruko in the village is a shadow clone, isn't she? Another nod. The clone was impressively convincing, but why leave the village in the first place? After a pause, Naruko answered calmly, I don't have to explain that. I've done nothing wrong. Kakashi looked at her intently. True, you haven't. But you still owe an explanation to the Hokage. Unless I speak to him myself. He noticed her expression dim slightly. Is that going to be an issue? I won't explain my reasons. You may speak to Tosama if you wish, she replied evenly. Kakashi knelt to her level and placed his hands gently on her shoulders. Naruko, just tell me what you were doing outside Konoha. If it's something beneficial, I'll keep it in confidence. But if it compromises the village, I'm duty-bound to report it. Their eyes locked. After a moment, Naruko sighed and relented. I was pursuing a personal ambition. I assure you, it aligns with the village's best interests and may even serve to enhance our intelligence network. Kakashi gestured for her to continue. I found individuals willing to act as information gatherers for Konoha. It's functional, but I need more time for it to yield results. Kakashi remained silent, though clearly intrigued. Naruko hesitated, then added, I also assisted the Mist Village in resolving their internal conflict. Kakashi blinked in surprise before chuckling softly, only to stop when he realized Naruko was serious. You helped them settle their conflict? Yes, Kakashi-san. You can verify my involvement once I achieve the rank of Jounin. Why wait until then? I agreed with their leader to keep my true identity concealed until that time. Alright. Let's say I believe you. Who taught you how to use puppets in combat? I taught myself. Naruko stepped out of his hold and lightly coughed. Please keep tonight's encounter between us. Kakashi considered for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Naruko bowed respectfully and waved over a clone that had returned with a bundle. Take her to rest, she instructed softly. The clone saluted and entered the shop after retrieving a spare key. She gestured to the spot where her puppet had fallen. Kakashi scratched his head and murmured an apology before using Earth Release, hiding like a mole to retrieve the puppet's remains. Naruko sealed the puppet neatly. Kakashi replaced his mask and disappeared with a silent leaf body flicker. Naruko exhaled and stepped into the shop, securing the door behind her. She paused as she noticed the shopkeeper's daughter watching her with wide eyes. Naruko gave a small wave and continued down to the workshop, where her clone sat sketching something intently. She walked past quietly and approached a small cot where her puppet had gently placed a resting girl. Did you win? The girl whispered sleepily. Naruko shook her head. Did he hurt you? Just a little. I'm all right, she replied softly, brushing the girl's hair gently. Good night. Good night, Naruko whispered back with a smile. She rose and carefully unsealed her other puppets, mounting them on the workshop walls, leaving her large python puppet aside for modification. I need to improve its compression technique. This should be my secondary advantage, she thought. She approached her clone, who was meticulously drafting something on a blueprint. Why are you designing a house? Without looking up, the clone responded, You'll understand once I give you my report. All right. I'm listening. The clone paused, turned, and said, You might want to sit down for this. Naruko pulled over a wooden log and sat. Well. 3 months later. At the Konoha Academy, the bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Students hurried out, chatting and laughing, except one. A composed figure approached the front desk. Iruka-sensei, Naruko said, arriving at her instructor's desk. Iruka had just finished collecting the class tests and had already dismissed Mizuki for the day. Looking up, Iruka smiled warmly at his top student. I wanted to ask if I could take the graduation exam tomorrow, she said respectfully. The request caught Iruka slightly off guard, though he had considered suggesting it himself. Do you believe you're ready to become a shinobi, Naruko-chan? Yes, sensei. Why the sudden decision? I've already mastered all standard academy subjects, including the required techniques. I've even created a variation, my own fire-based clone. Iruka raised an eyebrow. A custom technique? Yes. Due to my high chakra reserves, the basic illusion clone doesn't work for me. So I developed one better suited to my abilities. Impressed, Iruka nodded thoughtfully. I was considering recommending early graduation myself. Report to room 13 for the test. And Naruko, he added with a kind smile, Don't let the others discourage you. They may not fully understand your readiness. Naruko bowed respectfully and exited the classroom with a small, confident smirk. As she stepped through the academy's main gate, she sighed. I hope eavesdropping on me won't become a habit, Mito-chan. Turning, she spotted Mito Uzumaki Namikaze standing there, eyes brimming with tears. Naruko's expression softened. She extended her arms, and Mito ran into the embrace. Why do you want to graduate early? Why do you want to leave me? Mito asked, her voice trembling. I'm not leaving you. As you heard, the academy has nothing more to teach me. But someone might tease me again, Mito whispered. Then you stand up for yourself. I can't always be by your side. If I were, you wouldn't grow stronger. And no, you can't graduate with me yet. Why not? I know a lot too, Mito cried, lightly pounding her fists against Naruko's chest. You're talented, but not ready just yet. Naruko winced as Mito kicked her shin. You're bright, but there's more to learn. Promise me you'll wait. Fine. But only if you promise to make it up to me somehow, Mito said, cheeks flushed. Naruko stepped back with a smile. I'm not going shopping with your friends again. What? Why not? Naruko groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. The money I spent that day could have lasted me 4 months. Mito pouted. When you think of something reasonable, let me know. Now, let's get you home. Will you ever come back home, Wani-san? Nope. Why? I don't think I'll be able to keep living with my birth parents, Mito-chan. They don't even remember my birthday. Not to mention they haven't realized I unlocked my chakra ages ago, Naruko said with a soft sigh, her shoulders slumped in quiet resignation. Naruko placed a gentle hand on her friend's shoulder in support, and together they approached the large estate. See you later, Mito-chan, her friend said, wrapping Naruko in a warm hug before heading off to the Higurashi workshop. The following morning, Naruko rose just before the sun crested the horizon and discovered Shinyu curled up against her. Suppressing a quiet laugh, she gently sat up. When the small child clung more tightly to her, Naruko called her Kumo puppet and carefully passed the sleeping girl into its arms. She then created a fire clone and gestured for the puppet to transfer Shinyu into the clone's care. When she wakes up, take her to the park. Let her play and maybe meet someone her age, Naruko instructed. The clone smiled softly and nodded as Shinyu instinctively clung to him in her sleep. Naruko then summoned another clone. Find a plot of land near the forest. See if the landlord is willing to sell to a minor, even if I'm on the verge of becoming a registered kunoichi, I'd like no restrictions. Once I'm a Jinan, I'll look into starting construction. The clone nodded and walked to Naruko's workbench, reviewing the detailed house blueprints. There were still several hours before Konoha truly woke. Stretching, Naruko glanced at her Kumo puppet still standing nearby. With a shrug, she sealed it back into her wrist storage device. You never know when I'll need him again. Her gaze shifted to her mummy puppet, and she created another clone. Run a full diagnostic, repair it and analyze the seals. Its head shouldn't have detached so easily. Also, find a way to resize Python, if possible, she said thoughtfully. After a quick stretch, she turned to the door and opened it, only to find Higurashi's daughter stumbling in, caught in the act of spying. She straightened abruptly, scratching her head in embarrassment. Raising a brow, Naruko greeted her, Good morning, Higurashi-san. Is there a particular reason you've been watching me? I have no idea what you're talking about, the girl replied, attempting a glare, though Naruko found it more endearing than intimidating. I have excellent hearing. I could practically hear you breathing, Naruko stated calmly. Eventually, the girl relented. All right, yes, I was curious. How did you get so much money? Did you think I was secretly running some sort of underground operation? Naruko asked, a faint, amused smile tugging at her lips. When the girl nodded earnestly, Naruko chuckled. I assure you, nothing of the sort. I simply have access to generous resources. Why not assume my To-sama supports me? You clearly don't have a strong bond with him. Otherwise, you'd be staying with him in the Cage's mansion. Naruko gently patted her on the head and began walking toward the front door. What's your name? She asked. Tenten. Do you want to become a shinobi, Tenten-san? Yes. Then here's some advice, try breathing exercises and regular meditation. Tenten nodded quietly as Naruko waved goodbye and headed out. 2 hours later, after a routine of meditative training and jogging, Naruko was seated comfortably in classroom 13. Being the first to arrive, she pulled out the human body by Tsunade Senju. Though she had read it multiple times, she found the knowledge increasingly relevant. Engrossed in her reading, she didn't notice the room gradually filling with other students. Some of the older students took offense at the sight of someone so young, especially the Hokage's daughter, attempting the exam early. Their glares ranged from disbelief to indignation. One bold student approached her and cleared her throat. "You're in my seat." "I didn't see a name on it," Naruko replied without glancing up. "You're in the wrong class." "No, I'm not. Just because you're the Hokage's daughter doesn't mean you get special treatment." "This has nothing to do with my To-sama," she said calmly, turning another page. "Now, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate some quiet." The girl reached for Naruko's book, but Naruko lightly pushed her hand away. "I bet you don't even understand what you're reading," the girl scoffed. "Whether I do or not is none of your concern." "You think you're clever, huh?" "No," Naruko said gently, "but I do think you're attracting unnecessary attention. There are empty seats. Please take one." With a huff, the girl finally retreated. Whispers spread through the room. None of the students had expected the Hokage's daughter to act with such calm restraint. Meanwhile, Naruko remained focused on her book, unaffected by the murmurs around her. She had first become intrigued by advanced puppet techniques after reading about them in the bingo book. Her interest lay not in any dark applications, but rather in enhancing her knowledge of anatomy and chakra systems for innovation. She had resolved to showcase her puppet mastery during the Chunin exams if the opportunity arose. Naruko noted internally to enhance her Kumo puppet. Her scouts stationed across other hidden villages were yielding valuable information. The infiltration of Kumo had been difficult, though eventually possible under the guise of textile merchants. Surprisingly, Iwa was much more welcoming of newcomers, especially those offering allegiance. Her reading was interrupted when a boy with light blue hair quietly sat beside her. He coughed lightly to get her attention. Naruko glanced at him briefly, then returned to her book. "Yo." "Hello," she said politely, still reading. "I'm Nobu Tsukabe. And you?" "Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze. Nice to meet you." "Same here." Nobu grinned. "So, what are you reading?" "The Human Anatomy by Tsunade Senju." "Sounds intense. Are you aiming to become a medical ninja?" "No, I just believe the knowledge will be useful." "Fair enough. My older sibling's a medical nin and reads stuff like that all the time." "Are they based in the hospital or do they serve in the field?" "They mostly work in the hospital, but they're sent on missions occasionally." Naruko nodded and returned to her reading. A passing thought crossed her mind: how could he fight with his hair covering his eyes? But she quickly reminded herself of her own adaptation, using corrosive chakra to operate her puppets without damage, thanks to carefully crafted seals. Finally, the classroom door opened and a Chunin instructor entered, commanding the room's attention with a raised hand. He was a well-built man with rosy cheeks marked by swirls, wearing a standard Konoha uniform. "Good morning, aspiring Jinan. I am Kencho Akimichi, and I will be overseeing the written portion of your examination. Once you complete this test, you'll head to room 14 for your taijutsu assessment, and then to room 15 for weapons and ninjutsu evaluation. Once all are complete, return here to await the results." "Do you need me to repeat that?" he asked. No hands were raised. Kencho walked desk to desk, distributing test papers. When he reached Naruko, he was surprised to find her calmly awaiting the test, her book closed. He handed her the paper and moved to the front of the room. "Do not attempt to cheat, this room is being monitored." As if on cue, an Anbu operative briefly appeared, waved at Naruko with a casual air, and disappeared again. Kencho glanced at the clock and looked over the room. "Begin." In the Hokage's office, seated around the desk and observing the academy exams through the Sandaime's crystal orb, were Minato Namikaze, Kushina Uzumaki, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and Danzo Shimura. Although Danzo's reason for attending was unclear, the others assumed he was merely evaluating the next generation of Konoha's ninja. In truth, he was focused on observing Naruko Uzumaki, assessing whether she was still a suitable candidate for recruitment into his covert Root Anbu program. So far, her composed and discreet demeanor led him to believe she still held potential. When the written portion concluded, the group turned their attention to Naruko's sparring match against a seasoned Chunin instructor. Naruko had chosen not to use her specialized technique, Dizzy Spell Fist, first arm, wishing instead for the sensei to evaluate her true form. The observers were pleasantly surprised as they watched her agile footwork and quick reflexes outmatch the Chunin. Feigning a kick to the shoulder, Naruko instead swept behind the sensei's left knee. As the woman rolled away from a follow-up overhead strike, She rose only to meet a quick punch to her abdomen and a leg sweep to her other knee. The audience was surprised to see Naruko then shift into a more defensive stance, patiently waiting for the instructor to rise and recover. With a confident smile, she signaled for her opponent to continue. The sensei responded with a determined palm strike, which Naruko expertly countered. She struck twice at the woman's side with well-placed jabs, then turned and delivered a skillful elbow to her shoulder. Taking a step back, Naruko waited once again, respectful of her teacher's effort. After a moment's pause, the instructor cracked her neck, smiled, and launched another attack. This time, Naruko caught the strike and used its momentum to flip her opponent gently over her shoulder, bringing her safely to the ground. The teacher took a short moment to catch her breath, then stood and made her way to the evaluation table, where 3 more chunin were seated. She wrote Naruko's score on the paper, gave a nod toward the door, signaling silently that the test was complete, and Naruko exited with quiet confidence. The rest of the exams proceeded in a similar fashion. During the weapons test, Naruko chose senbon needles instead of the more commonly used kunai and shuriken, scoring a perfect 10 across all her targets. For her ninjutsu test, she used a sealing technique to transform into the likeness of the sandaime, seamlessly substituted herself with a nearby chair during a projectile test, and impressed the evaluators with a cloning jutsu unfamiliar to most present. Her parents and the examiners could only watch in astonishment. When she received her forehead protector, she calmly walked into the waiting room, took a seat, and waited to be dismissed. She acknowledged a blue-haired boy who passed by with a soft nod and even offered him encouragement. Later, that same boy returned with his own forehead protector, returned the nod, and quietly resumed reading his book. An hour afterward, the final results were posted. Unsurprisingly to some, Naruko had earned the title of Rookie of the Year. Minato, quietly reflective, pondered why Naruko hadn't shared her plans to graduate early with him or Kushina. "Minato-kun, did you hear what I just said?" Hiruzen asked, drawing him from his thoughts. "I suggested that Naruko be apprenticed to Ibiki Morino of the Tactics and Interrogation Division." "Why would you propose that, Sandaime-sama?" Kushina asked with concern. "She mentioned that she prefers working independently and told me directly that she is interested in learning the art of interrogation and analysis," Hiruzen replied. Minato paused thoughtfully before responding. "She's only 8. That's very young for such a specialized path. She should be with peers her age. Even if we agreed to the apprenticeship, how would she advance to chunin status?" "If I may offer a suggestion, Hokage-sama," Danzo interjected, joining the conversation for the first time. "Perhaps she could be placed on a team focused on information gathering and strategic operations, similar, though not identical, to the Ino-Shika-cho formation. Naruko's tactical approach and quiet nature make her a natural fit for stealth and reconnaissance." "That's actually a very reasonable idea, Danzo-san," Minato nodded in agreement. "I believe I already have the perfect instructor in mind for such a team." "Who?" Kushina asked, stepping beside him. The name Minato gave prompted unanimous approval. All that remained was organizing the graduates into their respective teams. Later that day. "Congratulations on earning Rookie of the Year, Naruko," said Nobu, a classmate walking beside her as they headed toward the Aburame compound. Truthfully, Naruko was walking with quiet purpose while Nobu followed along, explaining he had nothing better to do. "Thank you, Nobu-san," Naruko replied politely. Although she still found the older boy's friendliness a bit unexpected, she chose not to dwell on it. The Aburame clan leader had personally invited her to visit after the exam so that the clan members, and a few close friends, could congratulate her in person. Though not known for their outgoing personalities, the Aburame could be quite warm toward those they considered allies. The same held true for the Hyuga, who typically carried themselves with formality and restraint, but Naruko had managed to earn genuine smiles from both clans, a fact that brought her a quiet sense of pride. A sudden chill crawled up her spine. She paused, alert. The sensation reminded her of her first experience in Train Town, when she had sensed something unusual before discovering a mythical creature. She glanced sharply at a nearby tree, narrowing her eyes and holding her gaze for a full minute before deciding to move on. Nobu, still talking excitedly about how ninjutsu was way more exciting than taijutsu, didn't seem to notice. High in the branches, a masked Rudanbu operative observed silently, taking note of Naruko's direction before vanishing into the treetops, heading back to headquarters to report her location to Danzo. The observation would continue quietly, well into the evening. After the gathering, we find Naruko walking alongside the head of the Hyuga clan and his daughters as they made their way back to the clan compound. Nobu had already departed after enduring the full experience of an Aburame Hyuga social event, which, to phrase it kindly, was exceedingly subdued, quiet, and uneventful. Just the kind of atmosphere Naruko appreciated. The blonde kunoichi was currently listening as Hanabi, in her typically hushed tone, voiced her complaints about how uneventful the gathering had been. At the front, Hyashi's lips twitched in amusement, though he maintained his composed exterior. He had long since come to terms with the fact that Hanabi had not inherited either of her parents' temperaments. Where her lively attitude came from remained a mystery, one he preferred not to explore. Hinata, as usual, was quietly walking beside her sister, occasionally sneaking glances at Naruko, who walked slightly ahead. Ano, Hanabi-chan, Hinata murmured, it wasn't that uneventful. Hanabi looked at her older sister in disbelief. How can you even say that? I literally saw Shino doze off, and he was standing. She kept her voice low enough that their father wouldn't hear her, though he clearly had. You agree it was boring, right, Naruko? I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, Naruko replied with a calm smile, watching with amusement as Hanabi raised both arms in mild frustration. You're just being overly polite. I don't think you even know how to be rude. I bet you don't even know any unkind words, Hanabi teased. Naruko smirked softly, tilting her head. Her eyes gleamed with humor, causing Hanabi to swallow nervously. I usually keep any unpleasant thoughts to myself, Naruko replied gently, but I do understand your point. I've read that friendly teasing can help build bonds, but I never found much need for it. Perhaps I'll consider voicing my thoughts more often. Her gaze flicked momentarily to the clan head, who was clearly following the conversation, then to a now flushed Hinata, who turned an even deeper shade of pink under Naruko's knowing smile. Just be mindful around me, though, my words might not always be as pleasant as my smile. Whatever, Hanabi muttered, then quickly changed the subject. So, what kind of team do you think they'll put you on? I'm content with any placement, Naruko replied. Regardless of the team, I'll still advance to Jounin eventually. What do you think, Hyashi-sama? The clan head gave a thoughtful shrug. You're versatile. You might join a reconnaissance team due to your agility, or perhaps a tactical support unit because of your analytical skills. Ultimately, it depends on the decision of the fourth Hokage. They continued the rest of the walk in a comfortable silence. Upon arriving at the Hyuga compound, Naruko offered a respectful bow to the clan head and waved goodbye to his daughters. Instead of heading directly to her workshop, she made a quiet detour to the village park. There, she found a bench and settled in, patiently waiting. As she sat, she greeted a few passing chunin and checked the sun's position. It was mid-afternoon. Time passed slowly, and after about 30 minutes, an elderly man finally approached. The right side of his face was wrapped in bandages, and his clothing concealed much of his frame. He leaned on a cane held in his left hand and lowered himself onto the bench beside her. Though his age was similar to the third Hokage's, he bore more visible signs of a long and arduous career. Naruko had noticed someone following her earlier. Every time she passed a shop window, she saw a boy in a blue shirt and black pants glancing at her with an overly practiced smile. He wasn't exactly subtle. The man who had now joined her, however, had kept a neutral expression. They both turned their gazes toward a nearby pond, where a few civilian children splashed in the shallow water, laughing joyfully. It was a peaceful scene. The man finally spoke, still watching the children. You're quite perceptive, Naruko-san, to have noticed one of my subordinates observing you. Naruko kept her tone calm. He wasn't exactly inconspicuous, Danzo-sama. She remembered the man from her occasional visits to the Hokage Tower, where she often accompanied her father. From the very beginning, she had found Danzo unsettling. He always looked at her like a valuable asset, not a person. I don't appreciate being monitored, Naruko added, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Especially not without my knowledge. Danzo's voice remained low and even. I understand, child. I mean you no harm. I only came to offer you an opportunity. You could have sent for me formally, sir. I could have, he admitted, but I wanted to see whether your abilities matched your academy evaluations. He rested his walking stick beside him and leaned slightly into the bench. Naruko's eyes narrowed. His posture was too relaxed, deliberately so. Either he wanted her to lower her guard, or he didn't expect any resistance. She scanned the area. Aside from the children and a few parents, there were others nearby. One in particular caught her attention. A pale man with black hair seemed to be watching the children, but his eyes kept flicking in their direction. The boy from earlier. He's still nearby, she thought. Turning her attention back to Danzo, she allowed her tone to sharpen slightly. Why would someone like you keep surveillance on me? I'm nothing extraordinary. On the contrary, Danzo replied smoothly, retrieving a file from an unseen compartment. Your taijutsu is exemplary. While your chakra isn't suited for illusion techniques, you've adapted impressively. You've demonstrated proficiency across multiple elemental styles and created at least one technique in each. Naruko frowned as he continued. There are also talents you've hidden from the majority. For instance, you've learned puppetry, a skill difficult to master even without your unique chakra. You also left a clone behind while you explored distant territories. Naruko glanced away, keeping her composure. And may I ask how you discovered that? I had quiet observers. Your enhanced senses didn't detect them. Also, you're not the only person with sealing knowledge, Naruko-san. You are very gifted, and your parents remain unaware of just how capable you are. He returned the file to its hiding place and folded his hands calmly. Now, to the reason I'm here. I have an offer, one I believe only someone with no ambition would reject. Naruko remained silent, prompting him to elaborate. I'd like to invite you to join a specialized ninja program I oversee. Specialized program? She asked, her expression unreadable. Yes, I have been training ninjas in secret for over a decade for the protection of Konoha, Danzo said calmly, his expression resolute. They are the unseen foundation that strengthens this village, carrying out the missions that others shy away from. Everything we do is in service of Konoha's safety. I am offering you an opportunity to train, under one condition, your unwavering loyalty to Konoha. And to me. The man standing before him raised an eyebrow as he glanced toward two young individuals training nearby. So, those two over there. They're your trainees? He asked evenly. He appeared unfazed, a subtle smirk forming as he continued, this program you're speaking of isn't widely known, not even by the Hokage. He paused, watching the children from a distance. You do realize I could share what you've told me with the Hokage, right? Danzo didn't flinch. Even so, I believe you'll reconsider. While the missions are challenging, the purpose is noble. The man sighed and shook his head. Tempting as that may be, I must decline. I am satisfied with my current pace of growth, and I serve Konoha in my own way, even without joining your program. He subtly shifted his stance, a senbone concealed within his sleeve. I'll keep your secret, Danzo-sama, but only if you stop following me. Danzo's tone grew firm. That wasn't a request, child. He rose and gripped his cane, voice calm yet firm. You are still too young to understand the gravity of what I offer you. But I'll grant you time, to mature, to reflect. I will return in 2 years. And if your answer remains the same, I will not accept another refusal. With that, he nodded and walked away slowly. Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze, only 8 years old, watched him go and exhaled deeply. She was relieved. Combat was the last thing she wanted, especially against someone as politically dangerous as her Sarutobi Oji-san's old rival. She sank back, closing her eyes to rest. A few moments later, someone else quietly took a seat beside her. The silence lingered until Naruko felt a poke in her side. She opened one eye and glanced over, only to meet the sharp gaze of a woman who was clearly not shy about making her presence known. What's up, kid? The woman said with a sly grin. She seemed amused when Naruko gave her a once-over and promptly shut her eye again. The woman wore a tan trench coat, full body mesh armor beneath it, and a short orange skirt. Who are you? Naruko asked with her eyes still closed, idly tapping the armrest of the bench. It's rude not to look at someone when they're speaking to you, the woman said in a sing-song voice. Naruko opened her eyes briefly. Someone with better fashion sense wouldn't wear something like that in public. You're lucky the village police haven't issued a citation for public indecency. The woman gritted her teeth slightly but remained composed. Just being honest, huh? You've got some nerve for a little one. Naruko shrugged, still calm. I'm just speaking plainly. You're still here, and I still don't know your name. Anko Mitarashi. Special Jounin. Torture and Interrogation Division. She slipped a kunai from her sleeve and twirled it lightly, letting it drift near Naruko's cheek. Naruko frowned but didn't flinch. Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze. And could you please not do that? Anko didn't respond to the request. So, you're the Hokage's daughter, huh? I expected someone different. Naruko looked at her curiously. What exactly were you expecting from an 8-year-old? Super strength? Some kind of warrior physique? She winced slightly as the kunai pressed closer. I really don't like discomfort, Anko-san. Please stop. With a slight smirk, Anko finally retracted the kunai. What are you doing out here alone anyway? Enjoying some peace and quiet, Naruko replied. Strange to see an academy student out by herself. You should be with your classmates, Anko said as she casually ran a hand through Naruko's hair. What shampoo do you use? Your hair's incredibly soft. Naruko opened her eyes and stepped away quickly, studying the older woman warily. She observed the woman's violet ponytail and her keen brown eyes. Her gaze settled on a mark on Anko's neck. That seal. What is that? Anko's expression darkened. Why are you asking? Naruko raised her hands peacefully. Just curious. It looks like an intricate seal, complex, layered. Does it hurt? Anko hesitated but nodded. Naruko's brow furrowed as she studied the marking more closely. That design. I've seen something similar. But on animals, experiments. Yours is more refined, more dangerous. Who placed it on you? My former sensei, Anko replied sharply. He said it was a prototype seal. Naruko thoughtfully scratched her cheek. Was your sensei Orochimaru of the Sannin? Anko nodded tightly. Naruko carefully pulled out a sketchbook and flipped through the pages until she found one that resembled the seal on Anko's neck. I've seen a variation of this. Those ones were simpler, easier to remove. But this? She shook her head. This seal is far more advanced. It has added encryption layers in the kanji. I'm surprised Jiraiya-sama hasn't removed it. It's not that simple, Anko murmured. It can't be removed by anyone but the one who created it. Naruko nodded in understanding. That's the issue with these kinds of seals. They're bound to the original user's chakra patterns. But they can be altered. Not removed, but changed. Anko perked up slightly. Altered? You can do that? Not yet, Naruko admitted. I've studied enough to handle basic modifications, even break unstable ones, but yours is on a completely different level. If I overload it with my chakra, it could hurt you. I need more time to analyze it. I'm not a seal master yet, not like Jiraiya or my Ka-san, but I'm working on my own formulas. Your own seal formulas? Anko asked, intrigued. Naruko nodded, her gaze thoughtful. Yes. My specialty is adaptive seals, ones that can change based on the user's chakra fluctuations. I believe I can create a seal to counteract the pain and suppress the negative effects of yours. But I'll need more time to study the structure. For the first time, Anko's hardened demeanor softened. You really are something, kid. Naruko looked up at her, expression calm but firm. I just want to help. No one should have to carry something like that forever. She sat back down on the bench and retrieved a scroll from one of her many pouch compartments. I'm only sharing this because I enjoy intellectual challenges, and that seal on your neck definitely qualifies. With your consent, I can alter it, though it'll take some time. Now, about my personalized sealing techniques. When Lord Sarutobi gifted me my first Fuinjutsu manual, I studied it meticulously. He once said I had a natural aptitude for the craft, but even then, I saw areas where the formulas could be enhanced. The woman nodded, relaxing slightly as she listened. Naruko pointed to a familiar diagram on the scroll. This is your standard storage seal, right? The woman nodded again. Naruko then gestured to a more elaborate version nearby, its stroke slightly different, more refined. This one is one of my personal creations. I call it the infinite storage seal, or more casually, the black hole. It's uniquely designed so it never exceeds capacity. In theory, it could even preserve living beings inside, completely stable and safe. The woman's eyes widened at the possibilities. If Naruko ever chose to commercialize such a technique, the potential was astonishing. Naruko, however, continued, there are others, but I don't know you well enough to share them yet. No worries, the woman murmured, watching as Naruko carefully rolled up the scroll and tucked it back into her pocket. She then brought out a sketchpad, flipping through it with focused eyes. The woman cleared her throat and asked, so, you can't remove this strange mark, but you can modify it. What exactly do you plan to do? Naruko didn't answer immediately. Her eyes remained on the sketchpad as she analyzed a formula. Just when the woman was about to repeat the question, Naruko finally responded. The seal on your neck contains a concentration of nature chakra. I'm working on a method to install a transfer seal, something grounded into the environment that can harmlessly redirect the excess energy. Even better, I might be able to convert it into your own chakra source. I can also apply a glamour seal to conceal the mark entirely, bite impressions included. There's a restrictive control seal embedded in it, and I could neutralize that, but doing so would require a sample from Orochimaru himself and would be highly complex. She then unsealed a dense book from a mark on her wrist and leaned in to read it. The woman knew better than to try to follow along. The theories in Naruko's materials could be dizzying. Suddenly, Naruko paused for a long moment before forming a fire clone. She handed it a small scroll and said simply, "Start now. You have sufficient chakra." The clone gave a sharp nod and disappeared out of the room. "She's the most peculiar 8-year-old I've ever met," the woman thought with a shake of her head. She glanced at the sun and stood to stretch. Naruko looked up at her curiously. "Well, genius," the woman teased lightly, ignoring the slight raise of Naruko's eyebrow. "You know where to find me. See you around." She gave a casual wave and strolled away, doing her best to contain the grin that threatened to take over her face. Naruko turned back to the scroll in progress, her eyes gleaming with determination. Challenge accepted. The following day, Naruko received a report from her budding intelligence network, delivered via a particularly loud, dark green parrot that somehow managed to find its way into her workspace. She told the bird to wait while she finished her task, gave it a small snack, and then exited with Shinyu. Tucked in her pocket was the message as she walked hand in hand with Shinyu through Konoha's bustling market district. She had a week before returning to the academy and decided to spend the day with her sister and her closest friend. As they approached the Cage's mansion, Naruko hoped that Shinyu and her twin, Mito, might get along. But as soon as the door opened, the plan unraveled in spectacular fashion. "Who are you?" Mito demanded, gripping Naruko's other arm with intensity. "And why are you holding my sister's hand?" "I'm Shinyu," came the calm but firm reply. "And I'll hold whoever's hand I want to, thank you very much." Mito scowled, "I'm her twin sister." Shinyu smirked. "Looks like she got all the charm." Naruko blinked, mildly amused by the escalating tension but unsure if she should intervene or just watch it play out. It was oddly entertaining, and maybe even inspiring for a new puppet design. "Let go of her," Shinyu insisted coldly. "You let go." Mito countered, clinging tightly to Naruko's arm. "Naruko Nizan, tell her to back off." Naruko sighed. Her glasses hid the confusion and amusement in her eyes as both girls looked up at her with almost comically matching expressions of desperation. She cleared her throat, trying not to chuckle. Let's go play in the park, Naruko-san." "She's making me uncomfortable," Shinyu said, glancing uneasily at Mito. "Play in the park?" Mito gasped, horrified. "Naruko Nizan's going to help me with training, right? As if. She's my best friend. She'd choose me over you any day." Mito looked heartbroken as she turned to Naruko, stunned. "That's not true. I'm her sister and her best friend. Right, Naruko?" Naruko, unsure how to respond, resorted to action instead. With surprising agility, she gently pulled both girls into a playful double-arm hold, even as Shinyu kicked at the air in frustration. Guiding them into the living room, she set them on opposite ends of a couch. The girls pouted and crossed their arms, glaring at each other before simultaneously turning their backs. Naruko took a seat in front of them with a relaxed grin. "Mito-chan, how are you today?" Mito blushed but remained stubbornly silent. Nearby, Kushina stood quietly by the staircase, observing the scene with a small, thoughtful smile. It was clear that Mito's admiration for her sister ran deep, but Kushina wasn't yet sure what to make of the dynamic between the three of them. Back on the couch, Naruko turned to Shinyu, who kept stealing glances before quickly looking away again. "I thought you wanted to make a new friend, Shin-chan?" "I do. Just not her," she replied, folding her arms tightly. "And I'm not talking to you right now either." Naruko, searching her memory for anything she'd read that might help diffuse the situation, came up blank. So, she trusted her instincts, and said nothing. She reclined, sketchpad in hand, and resumed studying her notes. "You two can leave once you've had a pleasant conversation," she added calmly. The girls looked at each other with renewed frustration but reluctantly agreed in silence, understanding that neither wanted to give up Naruko's attention to the other. As Naruko scribbled, both girls quietly observed her work. Shinyu absently scratched her shoulder, recalling the precise location where Naruko had placed a stabilizing seal. It allowed her to access her werewolf abilities in moderation, without losing control. Naruko had designed it based on the seal placed on her sister, Mito, which regulated her Jinchuriki chakra. The sealing method was advanced, eliminating the need for outside medication and allowing Shinyu to retain her clarity even during transformations. Naruko glanced up, offering a warm smile. Shinyu smiled back but quickly averted her gaze again. Naruko chuckled quietly. In the kitchen, Kushina began preparing lunch, though she kept one ear tuned for any renewed tension, which, predictably, surfaced moments later. "Stop smiling at her," Mito suddenly exclaimed. "You're not allowed to smile at her like that." She leapt forward, lightly shaking Shin Yu's shoulders. The younger girl pushed back with a frown, clearly unwilling to back down. That is none of your concern. I smiled at her because she's impressive, ma'am. Shin Yu narrowed her eyes as she began tapping into her latent werewolf abilities. Her fangs and claws elongated subtly, and her shadow shimmered, shifting into the silhouette of a towering lupine form, an expression of her inner strength. Mito, responding instinctively, accessed the Nine Tails chakra. Naruko remained on the sidelines, uncertain whether to step in, but chose to intervene when it became clear that tensions had escalated. With practiced ease, she created a shadow clone. The clone swiftly approached Mito, gently enveloping her in chakra suppression seals. Meanwhile, the real Naruko manipulated her chakra strings into an extended arm, which she used to gently but firmly restrain Shinyu. The two girls, though momentarily incapacitated, continued to growl playfully at one another, energy still flaring between them. I'm not an old lady. I'm her twin, you airhead. My sister and I were born on the same day, get that into your head, Mito shouted, her chakra flaring more intensely with each passing second. Naruko's eyes widened in surprise, she hadn't realized Mito could override standard suppression so quickly. Before the seals could fully burn away, Naruko applied her custom-designed suppression seal directly to the center of Mito's back. Chains of energy, fortified by the Nine Tails chakra, materialized and securely held Mito, calming her increasingly erratic energy. Please let me go. I wasn't trying to start a fight. Mito protested, though her strength continued to push against the bindings. Naruko's clone maintained a firm but gentle grip on Mito, wincing slightly from the intensity of her chakra. Naruko herself was focused on Shinyu, who struggled in the grasp of the dense chakra arm. The blonde girl removed her glasses and rested them on her head as she observed the shifting werewolf shadow. It lunged to strike the chakra arm, but the attack bounced off harmlessly, unable to separate itself from Shinyu's body. That's new, Naruko thought, puzzled. A soft gasp caught her attention. She turned to find her mother staring at her, eyes wide with astonishment. Naruko blinked. How did I not sense her approach? She bowed respectfully and then glanced back at the girls. Mito was clearly calming down, though her eyes still flickered between her natural blue and the fiery red of the tailed beast. Shinyu was kneeling quietly, her head lowered in apology. I thought introducing my best friend to my sister, who's also my best friend, would be a great idea, Naruko began quietly, her tone calm but disappointed. But it seems I was mistaken. Both girls gasped softly, hearing the disapproval in her voice. I'll leave the two of you to clean up this room. When you're done, come find me. They glanced around in disbelief. There was a gaping hole in the ceiling, a chair torn in half, and a carpet that had been scorched and clawed beyond recognition. Naruko nodded at her clone, which gently deactivated the seal on Mito's back. The chakra chains dissolved and retracted smoothly into the seal mark. Simultaneously, Naruko released her chakra hold on Shinyu. With a sketchpad and sealing book tucked under her arm, she turned to leave but froze in place when she saw her father standing in the doorway, Anbu agents flanking him. Naruko sighed inwardly. Now I'll have to explain Shinyu's presence. Wonderful. She glanced back at the girls, who were still rooted in place, then looked toward her father, who continued to study her silently. With a slight tilt of her head, she offered a respectful nod before strolling past him and the Anbu toward the library. Naruko. She paused, waiting. Stay for dinner. There's something I'd like to ask you. Yes, father, she replied respectfully, and continued on her way. Back inside the Hokage's residence, silence lingered like fog. Minato slowly signaled for the Anbu to return to their duties, then turned to his wife. She's capable of restraining a Jinchuriki? Clearly, Kushina replied, still taking in the scene of chaos the girls had created. Minato approached Shinyu, who had begun to quietly attempt fixing the broken chairs by reinforcing them with her strength. He noted it wasn't going particularly well. You can leave that for now. What's your name? Shinyu, she responded softly, shifting uncomfortably. I apologize for the mess, sir. I lost control of myself. Minato nodded kindly and waved off the apology. That ability. I've never seen anything quite like it. Shinyu hesitated, then muttered something inaudible. Minato knelt down to her eye level. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Was a werewolf, she admitted quietly.
Minato blinked. After what he had witnessed, he wasn't surprised in the slightest. He glanced toward Kushina, who merely shrugged in response. How do you know Naruko? Shinyu had rehearsed for this moment. She took a deep breath. Naruko-san found me in the forest of death. She told me I was likely one of Orochimaru's experiments. She stepped back and bowed formally. I'm truly sorry for the incident today. I won't cause any more trouble. She turned toward Mito. And I apologize for calling you well, for calling you that. I'd like to be your friend, mainly because Naruko-san wishes it. Me too, Mito replied, swallowing her pride and raising a hand for a handshake. Friends? Shinyu accepted it firmly, perhaps a bit too firmly. She resisted the urge to growl when Mito matched her grip with equal strength. For Naruko One-san. You're welcome to stay for dinner too, Shinyu, Kushina interjected, interrupting their quiet contest of wills. The two girls released their grip, but exchanged one last narrow glance. Why don't you go find Naruko and see what she's working on? She added with a smile. Yes, Mom. Mito grinned and grabbed Shinyu's hand. Be back for lunch. She called over her shoulder as the two dashed toward the library. In the peaceful quiet of the library, Naruko offered a polite wave to the elderly librarian before making her way to her usual reading spot tucked away at the back. Once settled, she unsealed two advanced books on chakra sealing, along with a scroll containing her personalized seals and a sketch pad filled with notes. As she rummaged through her pockets for a pen, her fingers brushed against a folded report, a coded message she had intended to read later. Shrugging lightly, she decided now was as good a time as any. She pulled out a blank sheet, deciphered the encryption, and quietly read the message. Nothing urgent to report, Sensei. Everyone is settled in their respective countries. Some have enrolled in ninja academies, others have already graduated. The only exception, Scraps. He was lightly affected by a toxin from an Iwa student. It wasn't severe. Signed, Bird. Once finished, she channeled a touch of chakra into the paper, which dissolved into a harmless green gel, hardened, and then crumbled into dust. The reaction was always fascinating to observe. While she didn't expect anything major from her network for the next few years, she still reviewed the updates diligently. Turning her focus back to the sealing formula she had been working on since yesterday, after meeting Anko, Naruko's expression became thoughtful. She had seen similar seals before on both animals and some of the young students she'd taken under her wing. But Anko's seal was far more intricate. That didn't quite add up. Anko was supposed to be the first to receive such a seal, yet hers was significantly more advanced than the others. She shook off the confusion and began analyzing the seal once again. Most seals she had encountered had two simple layers, one that channeled natural chakra, albeit poorly, and a safety seal to disable the user if needed, which was rarely triggered. But Anko's seal had 4 layers, a binding seal, a chakra conduction seal, a punishment seal that triggered intense pain if disturbed, and what she assumed was a memory alteration seal. Oddly, there was no safety failsafe. That inconsistency unsettled her. Just then, she felt the presence of her younger sister Mito and their quiet companion Shinyu as they sat on either side of her, peering curiously at her notes. Naruko remained focused, scribbling intricate kanji combinations, testing their compatibility. So far, she had successfully layered her blank mind seal, which, in theory, could make Anko undetectable to external chakra senses, and a chakra transfer seal that acted like a conduit, safely grounding the unstable chakra into the earth. She was still puzzling over whether there was a way to stabilize the natural chakra so Anko could use it constructively. Nate-chan? Mito asked gently. Naruko hummed in response. What are you working on? Helping a friend with a tricky sealing issue, Naruko replied without looking up. Do you have time to help me with something? That depends, Naruko replied with a faint smile. What kind of help, and how complicated is it? I was hoping you could be my sparring partner? Mito asked. Naruko smiled more openly this time. I can do better. She resealed her books, tucked her sketch pad away, and stood. She nodded toward Shinyu. Why not spar with Shinchan instead? Mito raised an eyebrow and smirked. You're right, Nate-chan. Let's go, Shinyu. The two girls dashed to the training ground with enthusiasm. Naruko followed at a relaxed pace, leaping onto a tree branch to observe. From above, she narrowly dodged a stray kunai and chuckled softly to herself. Below, Shinyu deflected the kunai midair, then dropped low to avoid a flurry of shuriken. Drawing on a fraction of her inner wolf chakra, her eyes darkened and her claws and fangs extended slightly. Mito took a solid stance, a kunai in each hand, and charged forward. Shinyu fought instinctively, driven more by intuition than technique. Mito feinted a neck strike and rolled away from Shin's counterattack. The redhead quickly closed the distance again, landing a clean hook that knocked Shinyu backward across the field. Mito looked up at Naruko, grinning and giving a thumbs up. Naruko simply shook her head with a half smile. With renewed energy, Shinyu lunged at Mito, unleashing a flurry of quick strikes. Mito responded with practiced movements, kicking Shin off and retaliating with precision. When Shin tried to unleash a wind-based spinning technique using her wolf chakra, it failed mid-spin. Mito took advantage of the opening and pinned Shinyu to the ground, gently placing a kunai at her throat. "Yield," Mito said softly. Shinyu glanced at Naruko, received a nod, and exhaled before nodding in surrender. Naruko called from her perch, "You both did great. Mito-chan, don't lose focus, and Shin-chan, learn to rely more on your physical strength, not just your special abilities. Now give me 30 laps, 30 push-ups, 30 sit-ups, and 30 more exercises I'll list later." Both girls groaned. "Nei-chan. Oh? Did I hear someone say I should triple that?" Naruko teased playfully. Shinyu nudged Mito and bolted, Mito chasing after. Naruko chuckled. "And remember, no matter what I'm doing, I can still see you." Dash. Later that evening at the Uzumaki household, dinner was served. "Would you like another bowl of ramen, Sochi-chan?" Kushina asked, her voice gentle. Naruko shook her head, continuing to eat despite the meal tasting less satisfying than usual. Across the table, Minato observed her quietly. "You really surprised me today, Naruko," he said. "The way you handled your sister was impressive. What technique did you use?" "I applied a sealing formula, To-sama," she replied calmly. "Can I take a look?" Naruko handed him a piece of paper with the formula. Minato examined it closely. "This is brilliant. How did you come up with it?" "I rearranged some kanji and added a function," she said, returning to her food. Minato smiled proudly and exchanged a look with Kushina. His expression shifted slightly as he asked, "Where did you learn all of this sealing technique? I don't recall ever teaching you. And that chakra, it's not typical." "Sarutobi Oji-sama taught me. When he couldn't continue, he gave me reading recommendations. And yes, my chakra is different. It's denser. Maybe I inherited it from Ka-sama. Why didn't you come to us?" "I did," Naruko replied, her tone still even. "But you both said you were too busy." Kushina looked down in regret. "That's going to change. We'll start your training tomorrow." Naruko's voice was soft but steady. "I'm fine learning from Oji-sama and Shibi-sensei." "We insist, Sochi-chan," Minato added. Naruko paused, her gaze thoughtful. "Why now?" Her father hesitated. "What do you mean?" "I mean, is it because I placed a seal during training? Or because I graduated with the highest scores?" she asked, a faint, tired smile tugging at her lips. "For years, I woke up early, made my own meals, and watched you both train Mito while telling me you didn't have time. I asked others to train me because you wouldn't. Now that you see my achievements, you suddenly have time." Her words silenced the room. "I'm sure that's not fair, Naruko," Tsunade said gently. Naruko looked at her, her voice still soft. "How would you know?" Tsunade gritted her teeth. "I'm still part of this family." Naruko blinked and nodded. "Then you know what's been missing." She turned back to her parents. "I'm glad you noticed me. I really am. But it feels empty. You only saw me when I became useful." Minato reached for her seal again, but Naruko quietly stood up. "I'm not angry. I'm just tired," she said quietly. "I'm not sure I can trust you right now." As she stood, Shinyu followed, ready to leave. "Please, Sochi-chan," Kushina said tearfully. "I promise I'll make this right. Please come back home." Naruko paused at the doorway, then answered softly, "Maybe one day. But not yet." She turned to Mito and smiled warmly. "Good night, little sister." With a respectful bow to the others, Naruko and Shinyu stepped out into the night, hand in hand, calm and composed. System shutting down for this session. Mission complete. If you enjoyed this transmission, initiate the protocol, like, share, and subscribe. This is 6-Path Weeb, logging off. See you in the next upload. Till then, stay upgraded.